The playoffs are getting closer and closer, and as the Magic get ready for their big 8-game homestand, we got a game Friday first, but as the Magic get ready for this critical juncture of the season, who is going to show up for the playoffs and who needs to be put to the side? It's time for some stock up, stock down here on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And you are Locked On Magic. Today is March 15th, 2024. Beware the Ides of March. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the site expert and editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to take stock of some key players on the Magic's roster who is set to have a bigger role as we get closer to the playoffs and who is likely taking maybe a backseat or a step back. We'll get to a lot of that and a lot more coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The playoffs are inching closer and closer. Magic number to clinch a postseason spot is now down to 5. If you don't know what that means, 5 Magic win, any combination of 5 Magic wins or 5 Nets losses, and the Magic are in the field, or in the field of 10 at least. We're going to get there. Probably Magic will secure their spot in Game 83, Mission 83. We'll probably unfurl the Mission 83 banner, Mission Accomplished banners next week at some point. That would be my projection. Would actually be Thursday is when we'll get there. Maybe Tuesday. We'll see. We'll see how the Nets do. Nets are kind of a mess, obviously. But we are in for postseason basketball. It's real. It's happening, guys. We're playing postseason basketball. And so what we've learned over the last week is that playoff basketball is very different. And that while the Magic and Jamal Mosley especially, I think, has a solid plan and a good idea of what his rotations are and what they need to be for the regular season, what we really haven't seen yet is a playoff rotation and an understanding of which players will actually succeed and which players may flounder a bit when they get to the playoffs. I noticed, I picked up on this very early in the game on Wednesday. The Magic were targeting Cam Thomas at every juncture. And so you start to see that where you start picking on certain defenders and certain deals. So I want to talk about a few players today who are on their way up and are going to be key players in the playoff picture, even if they're not showing up quite yet. I want to talk about a player who we're not quite sure about, and then another player, of course, that is on the way down, a few players that are on the way down. Obviously, I think when you talk about this Magic team, there is one player who the Magic are not using the way that they're going to use him in the playoffs. And in fact, there's one player who I think is going to define a lot of the postseason for the Orlando Magic. At this point, so long as he is healthy, and that if is Atlas, to continue our Roman theme here. That if is carrying the entire globe on its shoulders. If Jonathan Isaac is healthy, that dude is a playoff player. That dude is a guy that is going to be very meaningful in the playoffs. We saw what he's done over the last couple games, hitting threes and looking a lot more comfortable. He is as healthy as he has been. And while the Magic are still hesitant to play him in back-to-backs and hesitant to unleash him fully with his minutes, the Magic quite simply dominate the minutes that he's in. We saw this. We're seeing this play out in the numbers. The Magic have a 101.7 defensive rating with Isaac on the floor. They're about 111.7, 111.6. They're nearly 10 points per 100 possessions better with Isaac on the floor. As most people would say, he is the best minute-by-minute defender in the league. Now, obviously, he's not playing starters minutes. He's not always playing against starters. But the Magic win his minutes. Scored 11 points, 4 for 6 shooting, 2 blocks in the win over the Nets on Wednesday. He has a plus 10.9 net rating when he's on the floor. It's no wonder then that the Magic are constantly trying to find ways to get him in the game. Whether it was against Minnesota, closing the game with their big lineup, where we're still workshopping names on it. But Isaac, Paolo, and Franz being on the floor at the same time, it didn't happen very often. It hasn't happened very often. But getting those three players just gives the Magic tremendous versatility, tremendous length. And look, Jonathan Isaac just erases every mistake you make. He erases his own mistakes. There's a play against the Nets on Wednesday where he tries to go for a steal, gets out of position, and then comes back for the chase down block. It was, I'm like where I sit at games, I'm behind the basket on the other side of the court, on the other side of the Magic's bench. And I was behind the play watching, and I'm just like, how does he do that every time? And these are just some of the big plays that Isaac brings. And at the end of the day, the playoffs are about doing the simple things really well, and then making critical plays and being able to make critical plays to save points and change possessions and change the flow. The Magic had their shot at winning and beating Indiana on Sunday, despite how poorly they played, because of that incredible block Jonathan Isaac had on Obi Toppin. Like, he makes incredible plays. Like, incredible plays. Plain and simple. And that's one of the reasons why Jonathan Isaac is so clearly a playoff player. The Magic are not going to be able to keep him off the floor when we get to the playoffs, because he gives you just enough offensively. And so long as if the Magic have a lead, they will close with Isaac on the floor. They will put their big lineup out there. They'll go, if they're playing a playoff game with the lead, they will definitely, depending on the matchup, maybe if they're going up against a team with two bigs, but Cleveland, I feel fine with Isaac guarding Evan Mobley on Cleveland. Maybe you wouldn't love Franz Wagner guarding Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Magic close with the lineup of Suggs, Franz, Paolo, Isaac, and Carter if they have a lead. If they need to catch up, Gary Harris probably slides in there for Isaac, but Jonathan Isaac is coming into his own. Like, Jonathan Isaac is starting to become undeniable. The Magic are better when he's on the floor, plain and simple. And we're getting to the point of the season where the Magic have to do what's going to help them win, what's best to help them win. And that part is the part that is difficult right now. And that's the part that is tricky to figure out. Because the Magic are still running their regular rotation, and we haven't seen them ramp up minutes for Paolo and Franz. Like, we will still see the Magic are still running a 10-man rotation. They're still guarding Isaac's minutes, which they should be at this point. But they're still running 10-man rotation and still have lineups where both Paolo and Franz are off the floor. When we get to the playoffs, that cannot happen. When we get to the playoffs, one of Paolo or Franz has to be on the floor at all times. And being able to insert a Jonathan Isaac, who you trust just tremendously on defense and trust to give you a little bit of offense, like he's starting to hit that fadeaway jumper again, having those players helps you so much. And being able to plug Isaac into any lineup and make it work, that means something. That matters. And so that is, the Magic are going to have to play Jonathan Isaac a lot more in the playoffs, like, plain and simple. Like, they're going to get to a point, and they've already gotten to points this season where he's playing really well and they just let him ride. They keep him in. He played the entire fourth quarter and that went over Minnesota. Like, they're more overtly and expressly experimenting with him at center. We'll see if they do it again against Toronto, but they did it against Brooklyn. They're starting to testing some things that are going to be valuable in the playoffs. That includes playing Isaac as the backup center, as in that role a little bit more. Jonathan Isaac is simply undeniable at this point. Again, if he is healthy, and I get it, that if is carrying a lot of weight, Jonathan Isaac's going to have to play a lot more than the minutes he's playing right now. He is going to have to be a major factor for this team in the playoffs, because he is someone that can indeed turn the game. I'm not sitting here advocating that he should start. He's 24, 25 minutes is certainly possible and doable. He might have to play 30. It's going to get to that point. And the question for the Magic as we get closer and closer to the playoffs is, how much are they willing to sacrifice, or how much are they willing to I don't want to say gamble. That's not the right call, but how willing are they to increase something that's working like Jonathan Isaac? They're going to find out, I think, really quickly. And look, I suspect game one is going to feel very much like a regular season game. It's kind of same rotations. And then they're going to see what works and what doesn't and adjust accordingly. I will tell you this. Jonathan Isaac's minutes are going to increase because whatever the Magic do with Jonathan Isaac, it works. And that's going to be something that we're going to watch in the playoffs because he continues to get more comfortable, continues to look healthier, and just continues to make this extreme impact on the team. One of the players who I think a lot of us are a little worried about in the playoffs, but could be very important and is playing a little bit better now. We'll talk about Cole Anthony and what his playoff prospects are. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at eBay Motors. If I can find the thing, there it is. As we do every Friday, our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to give you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. I have to say this is a little bit of a questionable pick considering who he's playing this weekend, but we got to give focus on the guy that the Magic will be seeing this weekend. And that is everyone's favorite player from the draft process, Grady Dick. The Raptors are certainly heading south right now. Scotty Barnes is out. Jakob Poeltl's out. RJ Barrett will miss Friday's game as well for a personal reason. There's a death in his family. Thoughts and prayers with him. Grady Dick, though, even before all that, I started to see his minutes go up. He's getting about 30 minutes a night, and as they rotate in and out of players in their lineup, and he is performing really well. As the Magic get ready for this game, for these games Friday and Sunday against the Toronto Raptors, Grady Dick is going to be pretty high on the scouting report. They got to keep him off the three-point line, defend that three-point line well. If they are able to do that, they should be able to get away with some wins. That's why I'm actually going to pick the guy who's probably going to end up guarding him a lot. If you're looking for a Magic player to add to your lineup, Jalen Suggs is your guy. Yes, he scored 11 of his 14 points in the first quarter of Wednesday's game. Entering Wednesday's game, he was shooting 45% from three. Give that guy a couple days off to let his body heal. He usually comes out swinging. He certainly did that on Wednesday against the Nets. No reason to think he isn't going to bring it against his favorite team, the Toronto Raptors. We know the Raptors fans love Jalen Suggs too. Expect 2 big games from Suggs this weekend. And of course, the Magic have a very favorable schedule. They get Toronto twice and Charlotte on Tuesday before they face the New Orleans Pelicans on Thursday. So Jalen Suggs could be in line for some big games this week. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your car needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit's only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. And baseball fans, mark your calendars for Wednesday, March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On Sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV app. So let's talk about one player who I think is both playing really well. I think Cole Anthony's shown us a lot this year and has played pretty well and done some solid things, but is also, I think, a major question mark as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. And some of that is just efficiency and everything else. Cole Anthony has had, I think, a weird season. Certainly like the first quarter of the year, it looked like he could be a sixth man of the year type player. He had this huge, long slump through the middle of December and January. He's averaging a career low 11.6 points per game. Granted, playing a career low 22.9 minutes per game. He's shooting 42.7% from the floor, which isn't great. Only 31.1% from three. There is a lot to be desired from Cole Anthony, but dealing with a thigh contusion, he got the All-Star break. Since the All-Star break, only averaging 10.5 points per game, but shooting a little bit, but still struggling, honestly. 40.6% shooting, 24.3% from beyond the arc. It's been a wild ride. And some of it is Cole Anthony is asked to create and do a lot of creation for that second unit. He has to be the one to kind of take some of the star shots, so to speak. Create some space, work off the dribble. It's been a weird season for Cole Anthony. The Magic know that when Cole Anthony is going well, when he's scoring, when he's able to get those shots down, that Magic bench is so difficult and tough. And this team, I don't want to say becomes unbeatable, but they become very difficult because their starters, even against good teams, usually hold their own, and the Magic usually beat teams up with their bench groups. And so when Cole Anthony plays at a really high level, the Magic become a really good team, like not unstoppable again, but a really solid team. And so Cole Anthony deserves a lot of credit and a lot of kudos for giving this team that verve. But we all know what the flaw with Cole Anthony is. He is small. Hate to say it, that size matters. Like that there's a reason why the Magic are obsessed with length. His size puts him at a disadvantage defensively, despite how much harder and how much better he's gotten on the defensive end. And even offensively, his ability to create space and his reliance on kind of floaters and those push shots, which, are typically low percentage shots. His need to rely on those shots lowers his percentage, lowers his efficiency. It hurts him overall. And so Cole Anthony, honestly, he's going to be one of the biggest X factors when we get to the playoffs. He is going to be one of the players that matters most when we get to the postseason. If he goes well, the Magic are probably going to win. If he struggles, the Magic are probably going to be hard pressed to win and hard pressed to compete. And again, I don't want to sit here and put it all on him because there's a lot of players I think they're going to have to prove themselves in the playoffs. There's a lot of players I think that the Magic are going to have a little bit of a short leash on. We're going to get to one here at the end. I would argue Joe Ingles, despite everything he brings to this team, if he's someone that defenses are targeting a lot and he's struggling defensively, you're going to have a quick hook on him. You're going to have a quick hook on a lot of guys. You're going to have to be willing maybe to try an Anthony Black if your defense needs the jolt, or a Goga Batadze. The Magic have depth, but they're not perfect. And Cole Anthony is the one guy, though, off this Magic bench that there really is no other option for. You could maybe throw Marquel folz, and we'll talk about Marquel here in a minute and why that's maybe not the best idea. But Cole Anthony has to perform for the Magic to be successful in the postseason. And there's no reason to think that he can't do it. He is someone that loves the big moment. He is someone that plays with a ton of energy. I won't sit here and say Cole Anthony is a great defender, but he fights. That dude fights hard. And that willingness to fight, that willingness to get in the mix, that he finds ways to impact the game defensively and finds ways to be a factor on that end of the floor. But having said that, he still needs work. Having said that, he still is someone that will struggle against taller players. And if you get him in the right switch, which, teams are going to try and switch him onto their best players and force him to defend, this is the challenge of the playoffs. This is what the playoffs do. The playoffs force you to confront these weaknesses, and teams challenge you to overcome them. They will pick you up. They will pick you apart detail by detail and say, okay, let's see if you can beat this. Let's see if you can overcome this weakness that we perceive. Cole Anthony is going to, probably more than any other player, because look, Paolo and Franz, the pressure they're going to be under, the pressure that they're going to see, that's going to be educational for them, and they'll find a way to get over it. Like, we saw what Nikola Vucevic did in his first playoffs in 2019, how he came back in 2020. The stars will figure it out. It's the role players that, because they're easily discardable, you're not building your whole franchise around them. It's the role players, though, that ultimately determine whether those stars have it easy or whether they have it really hard. And we'll get to one of those things coming up here in a minute. I have no doubt that Jalen Suggs is going to step up to the plate. That dude loves the spotlight, and he's going to play hard either way. I think everyone has a lot of questions about Wendell Carter. I know I've expressed my questions about Wendell Carter, but we'll see how he steps up. Cole Anthony, though, is the one that I think we just don't know what we're going to get. And again, I think Cole is up to the moment. I think he will rise to the occasion, but the question will be whether that's enough. And this season's been a weird one. This season's been a rough season for him. And we will see if he can step up to the plate and give the Magic what they need. If you can't guess who I'm hinting at, whose stock is down, we'll talk about Marquel Fultz and why the Magic need him and why the Magic may not be able to play him. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Stitch Fix. That instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good. They say that clothes make the man. That's what you get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. Just give your stylist your size, style, and budget preferences. You order boxes when you want and how you want, no subscription required. They send you 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. You keep what works, send back the rest. Your stylist always sends just right pieces and the fit is on point. It's like they have ESP. They have style ESP. I don't know how they do it, but they just get you. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. All you have to do is shop. No one likes to shop. Even people who say they like to shop hate to shop. They save you that time and effort. Plus, you get outfits that make you look and feel really good. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. Stitchfix.com/lockedon. Okay, we've talked a little bit about a lot of players here. Obviously I think Jonathan Isaac's going to be a major impactor for the playoffs. I think he's going to be one of the most important players on this roster when the playoffs come around. We've talked a little bit about Cole Anthony and what we may or may not see from him. The guy, though, that I think everyone kind of understands, and this may be the final nail in the coffin for whatever comes this summer, is Marquel Fultz. Look, I think most Magic fans want Marquel Fultz to succeed. We love that dude as a person. We love the effort that he's put in to try and get his body right, to try and reclaim his career. There's a lot of high hopes for Marquel Fultz entering the year because he looked so good at the end of last season. He looked so comfortable. A year after that ACL injury, after returning from the ACL injury, he looked like he was really as close to number 1 pick Marquel Fultz as he was ever going to be. Unfortunately, that is as close as he was ever going to be. Knee tendonitis issue has slowed him down all season long, and he just hasn't looked the same. It's not just that he's appeared in only 28 games this season. It's not just that he's averaging 8.3 points per game, the lowest since joining the Magic. It's not that his free throw percentage is down to 63% or his field goal percentage is down to 48.6%. It's not just that he is shooting only 1 for 10 on threes, and that is total. 10 three-pointers in 28 games. It's that he does not seem to have the lift and confidence in his shot that's going to keep defenses honest. If you go on my Patreon page, I broke down Paolo Banchero's passing. I did point out that one play where Paolo spotted Marquel Fultz cutting into the middle of the zone, right into the pocket that was left open by the big man, and Marquel Fultz raised up and hit a jumper. He's starting to hit those jumpers a little bit more, so he is starting to look a little bit better. But that was actually the problem. The problem was most teams now are assigning their center to Marquel Fultz. If they're playing man-to-man, the center guards Marquel Fultz and just kind of roams around the paint, keeping the Magic from being able to drive to the paint. And obviously Marquel Fultz isn't scaring anybody at the three-point line. And so Kel, who I give a lot of credit to, has found pockets to take advantage of this has to sneak into lanes and has to sneak into passing lanes and sneak into the mid-range to just keep defenses honest. And while that's all well and good, that's not going to get the job done in the playoffs. In the playoffs, the Magic need to be able to spread the floor. They need to be able to create space and get downhill to the basket. Their inability to shoot and their lack of shooting in the games against the Knicks and the Pacers are ultimately what bogged those games down and cost them those two critical games on the schedule. And that's not all Marquel Fultz's fault. He only played in the game against the Knicks, obviously. This is where, Anthony Black not being a super confident attacker yet, even though he's a better three-point shooter, but not a three-point threat to a lot of defenses. Where Gary Harris, who's not an attacker, where that stuff kind of matters. The Magic have a lot of one-dimensional players. And unfortunately, Fultz just isn't a big-time offensive threat. He is just not someone that defenses have to worry about on the offensive end. Now, he can still beat you a little bit in transition, although there's that one play on Wednesday that didn't quite check out. He can still hit that mid-range jumper. It's not like he's a total zero, or he's not necessarily a full negative either. But this is the thing. When you get to the playoffs, you know your opponent so well, you start just making gambles. You say, okay, we're going to take away Paolo Banchero's driving and give up the Anthony Black three, maybe the Jalen Suggs three, although I think Jalen Suggs' three-point shooting recently is going to suggest that is a bad idea. They're going to give something up. In 2020, the Bucks were perfectly happy giving up Gary Clark threes. Gary Clark burned them once, beat him in game one. Was he going to do it for 3 more games? Their bet was no, and that bet proved correct. That's the kind of stuff that happens in the playoffs. And so every moment that Marquel Fultz is going to be in the playoffs, we're going to see what we're seeing now with how teams put their centers on him so that they could just roam the paint and protect the paint. We're going to see that in overdrive. We're going to see that doubled down and increased. Teams are going to go out of their way to ignore Marquel Fultz until he proves that he can hit those threes consistently. Even then, if he has one game where he hits 2 threes, they're going to say, okay, do it again. The Magic are going to try playing Marquel Fultz, and they should. He's earned that right. He's part of the team's rotation. He's still really important to manage the team, run the team, and just give them a little bit of stability. We saw Anthony Black, frankly, look like a rookie and looked a little scared in those games against the Knicks and the Pacers. He just looked very tentative and not aggressive. I think Anthony Black gives you a little bit more than Marquel Fultz because A, he's not afraid to shoot. If teams do leave him open, he will make them pay for it. And B, his defense is usually pretty valuable. Wasn't valuable this weekend, but his defense is usually pretty valuable. I would honestly play Anthony Black over Marquel Fultz. I would give Fultz a chance that I'm suspecting that defenses are going to ignore him. And so this might be the final nail in the coffin before free agency this summer for him. I think we all kind of sense that's the direction the team is going. They're not playing him in these critical minutes and critical games right now. He's coming off the bench and doing some good things. I don't want to completely dismiss Fultz. He's making these jumpers. And so, I think he's a player that you have a quick hook on in the playoffs. If he's playing well, you ride with him. If he's not, you've got to pull him quick because those minutes are going to bog down really fast with how teams are going to overcommit to protecting the paint against this Magic team in the playoffs. Orlando needs to be able to spread the floor, and they're going to have to hit some shots early to at least make the defense reconsider packing the paint the way that they're going to pack the paint. Making threes early is going to be really, again, probably the most critical element of the Magic's playoff push, of playing in the playoffs. They've got to hit shots early. If they hit shots early, they're going to be fine. They're going to be competitive. If they miss some shots early, it's going to be like a snake. Everything's going to get real tight real fast, and the Magic are going to struggle to break through until they prove they can hit some outside shots. That's going to be the secret sauce of the playoffs. And unfortunately, that's just not what Marquel Fultz is good at anymore, if he ever was. And that's going to be the frustrating part for him. I do foresee that Marquel Fultz is not going to be a factor in the playoffs and is going to be a player that is frankly going to fall out of the rotation by game 2. I think they'll give him his chance, and they should. But you got to have a quick hook on it because what he misses, what he lacks, that's the kind of stuff that's going to hurt you in a playoff series. Those are some stock up and stock down as we begin to consider what the Magic will look like in the playoffs. Obviously, we still got a little ways to go before we get there. A lot of things to get done. Some big games coming up, including the 8-game homestand that begins Sunday. The critical 8-game homestand you're at Toronto on Friday. We'll recap that game on our next episode of Locked On Magic. Home versus Toronto Sunday. Charlotte on Tuesday. New Orleans on Thursday. Sacramento next Saturday, Golden State on Wednesday, the Clippers on Friday, and 1 week from Friday, 1 week from today, and then the Grizzlies, I believe, on a back-to-back, and then the Blazers to close out the homestand. Then the Magic go to New Orleans, to Charlotte, back home for Chicago, the back-to-back from hell when they go to Houston, and then Milwaukee, then Philadelphia in the penultimate game of the season, and then the Milwaukee Bucks at home to close the season. I've got the schedule memorized now. That's how close we are to the end of the season. The playoffs are going to come very, very quickly. And obviously, every game is going to matter with how tight the Eastern Conference standings are. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. I missed Chicago in there. They play Chicago at home. Then they do that last road trip. Then the back-to-back from hell. I don't know if I got that in there, but the schedule is coming to the end here. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of the podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You, of course, catch us on YouTube as well at youtube.com/@LockedOnMagic, or just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And be sure to check out my Patreon page as well. Like I said, I broke down Paolo Banchero's passing from the game against the Nets, where he's improved as a passer and where he can still get better. You can find that by subscribing to my Patreon at patreon.com/OrlandoMagicHub. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel. You can find that on YouTube, as well as on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Wright. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.